UFC Fight Night, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Kevin Holland. Welcome to your full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. I go by Harris. Zahn is back for this prediction video. And in our usual fashion, what we are doing is breaking down the fights, telling you which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog is worth it, and some parlay action towards the end of the video as well. Of course, strictly from that betting perspective. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Make sure you participate in the comments. And of course, make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. We have a very busy third last card of the year for this UFC Fight Night event. 15 fights overall. 6 of them are on the main card. 9 of them are on the prelims. So let's get to work right away with fight number 1. We're looking at Yazmin Jauregui taking on Istela Nunes. And for this fight, Jauregui, she had a unanimous decision win over Yazmin Lucindo. That was in her August debut. Her originally scheduled opponent was supposed to be Istela Nunes. So that's very interesting there. I like her on the feet. Her stance is a little Brandon Moreno-like, has that sort of Mexican style of striking. Good kickboxing. The boxing is decent as well. She has good combinations, good hands. She can be explosive, but still has that technique behind it. Overall, good movement, good control of the range. She's pretty light on her feet. She can be explosive. She can be aggressive when she does decide to put the pressure on. Good power, too. You see her record there, undefeated, 9-0. 6 of those 9 wins are via KO, TKO, which just doesn't happen that often in the women's strawweight division. Takedown defense is lacking a bit, but I don't think that'll matter in this fight. And keep in mind, she's still very young, still just 23 years old. So she is somebody who can improve drastically fight over fight. Istela Nunes, 0-2 in the UFC now. She lost to Sam Hughes back in April. She is a striker in her own right. She's relaxed on the feet. She's pretty dynamic as a striker. Has that Muay Thai style with good leg kicks, good front kicks, a decent Thai clinch as well. She can be fast and explosive. She can be a good counterpuncher, and she has good footwork. Doesn't really have the best ground game either, but again, that won't matter for this one. I think this is a good fight to start things off in the strawweight division for the women. It reminds me a bit of Jauregui's last fight versus Yazmin Lucindo, where we're looking at 2 strikers. I expect both fighters to have moments in this fight, but I like Yazmin Jauregui's toughness, her ability to keep going. I think she finds that extra gear, and her pace doesn't really slow down. And I think that'll be the difference in this fight. I can see a close round 1. I can see the beginning of round 2 being close as well, as they're still kind of feeling out each other. But then I can see Jauregui starting to pull away in the second round, in the third round, if not the first round as well. Jauregui has shown me good IQ, and I think that'll be the deciding factor in this one. So I'm looking for Yazmin Jauregui to stay undefeated. She's going to be my pick for this one.
Yeah, this is a good fight to start the card with. Yazmin, she definitely has heart. She definitely has the power. Her knockouts show it. Istela, though, I think is the more technical striker. I think this is mainly going to be a striking match. Istela Nunes, I feel, is the better kickboxer, and technically could land some good shots, but she doesn't have the power. She only has 1 knockout, I believe, on her record in her entire career. So the power might not be there. And in her last fights, it showed that her cardio is a big issue after the second, third round. I think Yazmin should use some grappling. I think she has the advantage there. But I think as the fight goes on, after the first round, I see Yazmin kind of taking over the fight with her pace. And again, that power, I think she's going to give Nunes problems as the fight goes. Nunes' cardio is questionable. So I like Yazmin in this spot to get the win.
Second fight of our prelims, Marcelo Rojo versus Francis Marshall. Francis Marshall, undefeated newcomer. He beat Connor Matthews on Dana White Contender Series back in August. 4 of his 6 wins are via submission, so that gives you some insight into the type of fighter that he is. He's a decent striker, though, has good technique, good movement, a decent jab, decent combinations, has that good consistent pace. Stylistically, boxer, wrestler, that's what you're going to expect out of him. His takedown entries are solid. The takedowns are solid. I mentioned those submissions. They're all rear naked chokes. So that kind of tells you that he's good at taking your back. That control is there in terms of his ground control, his style of taking over on the ground. Marcelo Rojo, on the other hand, is on a 2-fight losing streak. He lost to Kyler Phillips. That was all the way back at the beginning of the year. He is a good striker. He's introduced as a Muay Thai kickboxer, good in and out movement. He does do a lot of feints, good striking diversity, can definitely be explosive. I've seen him use some switch stance. I've also seen him load up on his punches a little bit. 66% takedown defense, which is okay, I suppose, but he was taken down 3 times in his last fight, and I think that'll be super relevant for this fight. Also, I don't think Marcelo Rojo has the best cardio. I think that's ultimately what's going to cost him for this one. I look at how Kyler Phillips was able to take down Marcelo Rojo multiple times in that last fight, and that tells me that I don't really doubt that Francis Marshall will be able to land takedowns when he looks for it. We know that Rojo can be dangerous on the feet, but a bit old for the division. Age is catching up to him a little bit. The speed isn't quite there. He's not the most active as a striker. And I don't think Rojo really has any tricks on the feet, so to speak. So I do think for the most part, Francis Marshall will be able to stay out of danger. And again, that ground game that he will resort to, potentially the cardio advantage as well. I think the only thing going against Francis Marshall on this one is that it's his debut, which of course makes it risky no matter what. So I'm definitely not interested in betting on this one, but Francis Marshall is going to be my pick to stay undefeated.
Yeah, this is a tricky fight because for Marcelo Rojo, as you mentioned, his last fight was Kyler Phillips. Before that was Charles Jourdain. So this is a big step down in competition from fighting those 2 killers to now fighting a 6-0 Francis Marshall. When you look on his record, Francis really hasn't been tested. On the Contender Series, he's fought a guy that was 5-0. But before that, 7-6, 24-30, 3-2, 0-0. He has a decent amateur record as well, but obviously the competition's not there. You hit the spots. Francis has a good grappling base. He has some good jiu-jitsu if he gets on top. He can definitely take the back. But his takedowns, his wrestling is where he does shine. And he seems to have the cardio to go for 3 rounds. And his striking is definitely improving. His striking, he can hold his own against Rojo. I do think Rojo has the advantage. I think he's the more dangerous guy. But Rojo's kryptonite is the grappling, is the wrestling. So I got to go with Francis Marshall. The eye test says this guy does have potential. But again, he hasn't fought anyone. So this is a big step up for him. I wouldn't be surprised Rojo wins with experience. But just based on that wrestling, that big advantage there, Rojo has an issue with that. I think Marshall gets this one done.
Third fight, Natan Levy versus Genaro Valdéz. Natan Levy had a unanimous decision win over Mike Breeden in April. He's a southpaw, decent striker. He's actually introduced as a striker. Backs up a little bit too much, though, for my liking. It is a bit easy to put the pressure on him. But he is a diverse striker. He covers up well. He has an active jab, good kicks. He can put solid combinations together as well. He goes at a good, consistent pace. Solid clinch work, good takedowns as well. We see those takedown numbers there. 5 takedowns per at 56% accuracy. So that tells you that he is going to be able to land them. He can find the submission too. 7 wins, almost half of them are via submission. Doesn't really have the best takedown defense, which could be important in this fight for both fighters. And again, I mentioned that pace. He does tire out a little bit going into round 3, but he has that toughness, has that IQ to be able to potentially still win the round or at least survive. So he's going to be a fighter that you sort of bank on for scoring the first 2 rounds. Genaro Valdéz, on the other hand, lost his debut to Matt Frevola. That was back in January. The striking is decent. He has good combinations. Looks like he has a lot of pop as well as an explosive striker, and is a good counter striker as well. He goes at a high pace, definitely an aggressive striker. Looks like he has a decent clinch as well. Looks like he can land that takedown, as we see the numbers suggest, although small sample size, of course. And I mean, he was finished in his last fight, but he showed a lot of toughness to be able to stay alive as long as he did. We haven't really seen, or I haven't really seen, I should say, Genaro Valdéz's takedown defense fully tested, but I do believe again Natan Levy just has that ability to land them. Again, 5 takedowns per, over 50% on the accuracy side of things. And although I think they are well matched, just overall, I am looking at Levy being the more complete fighter, having more ways to win, kind of being able to out tough it, IQ his way to victory, use that clinch, use the takedowns. I'm looking at Natan Levy to get it done in what is, I guess, otherwise a smart victory, where he kind of puts points in his favor and gets rounds under his belt. Natan Levy is going to be my pick. I don't want to bet this one. I'm not a fan of Natan Levy from a betting perspective, so I'm going to stay away from that perspective.
Yeah, these guys have fought similar competition as far as how good the guys are that they fought. I think Levy has fought in the better competition, but aside from the guys they fought in the UFC previous to that, the guys weren't really that good. And obviously, we know that Levy has won his last fight. In this fight, I think Levy's going to have to utilize that grappling. I think he should get this fight to the mat. I think he's going to be the stronger guy physically. And on the feet, he is more technical, but that Valdéz guy, he's crazy, right? The way he strikes, like he relies on heart and toughness. That Valdéz guy, he just goes forward and he just throws like ridiculous at a ridiculous pace. He tires himself out, but even when he's tired, he's still fighting. I think that's a perfect time for Levy to kind of get his grappling going when he kind of gets into that blitzing striking style. I don't think he's that good though. I don't think Valdéz skill wise is that good. I think he relies on that toughness and that heart, and it can help him get wins. But I think at the UFC level, you need a bit more. Now, I'm not sure if Levy's the guy to take advantage of this guy because his skills aren't really there. But I believe Levy can avoid the KO early, and I think he can kind of get that grappling going. I think he's the better grappler. I think he's the better wrestler, but I think more importantly, I think he's the better jiu-jitsu fighter. And I think he's gonna be able to kind of get the fight his way as the fight goes on, because Valdéz is going to empty his tank in that first round. And if Levy just avoids getting knocked out or even gets in a top control position, it's going to get a lot easier for him as the fight goes. Levy doesn't have the best cardio as well, but I believe he has better cardio than Valdéz. Valdéz, again, he just empties his tank. So I'm going to go Levy to get it done. But the wildness of Valdéz makes me think that this fight is close, because the way he fights, anyone can get caught. It's not really technical, so it's unorthodox. He can catch you slipping. I think the way he fights, I don't think people will expect the things he does when he's striking. But I still think Levy gets it done. The more well-rounded guy, survive that first round and then use that wrestling second, third round to get the win here.
All right, fight number 4 of our prelims, and a really good one here in the women's flyweight division. We have Tracy Cortez taking on Amanda Ribas. I think 2 top 15 women, if I'm not mistaken. Ribas, I think, is inside of that, inside the top 10, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless, Tracy Cortez, 10-1. She's on a 10-fight winning streak after beating Melissa Gatto back in May. She has good overall stand-up, good movement around the ring. She's light on her feet. She's patient, good striking IQ, a lot of fakes and feints, and has good wrestling. She has good takedowns. She has good top control. She can stay out of the submission danger. She's a good scrambler. Just a really well-rounded fighter in this flyweight division. Amanda Ribas, on the other hand, split decision loss to Caitlin Chookagian back in May. That was a close fight. She's introduced as a judo practitioner. She's a judo black belt. Uses that in the octagon, definitely. Muay Thai style in her stand-up, good output, good activity from her. She has a good Thai clinch, unsurprisingly. She can also land the takedowns, right? So just over 2 takedowns per fight. And again, she sometimes uses that judo, that headlock takedown to surprise her opponents in ways. And that leads to almost 50% accuracy. And when she's on top, she has really good positioning and really good jiu-jitsu, good technical BJJ as well. You should find those submissions. You definitely have to be sharp at all times. when you're on the ground with her. It's a very close fight. These are two fighters that can do a little bit of everything. Both fighters are very well matched for each other, and both of them have ways to win. When I match up their skill sets, I'm looking at Ribas being the more active striker, but I'm looking at Cortez being the more technically sound striker of the two, the smarter striker, potentially the more effective striker as well. I'm going to give Amanda Ribas the grappling advantage, but I like what Cortez was able to show me in terms of handling the grappling of her last opponent, Melissa Gatto, who is probably better than Ribas, if not just as dangerous as Ribas in terms of being really active with those submission attempts. Plus, we know Tracy Cortez's relationship with Brian Ortega, so I feel she's pretty prepared there from a grappling perspective. Amanda Ribas has the judo takedowns, but I feel like Tracy Cortez is the better pure wrestler. That said, Ribas does have a legitimate 88% takedown defense. So it's going to be interesting to see if Cortez is able to take her down. Even if Cortez is not able to land the takedown, I think about Ribas's last fight. She landed 3 takedowns versus 0 landed by Caitlin Chookagian. But at the same time, she was still outstruck. She still lost the fight. I can see Cortez looking better on the feet. Like I said, more technical, smarter, probably more effective on the feet as well. Really, I think she can pull off a unanimous decision. I think Tracy Cortez is really well-rounded, whereas Ribas still has some holes in her game, despite being very dangerous in certain areas. So I'm going Tracy Cortez. I believe she's a slight underdog on this, but she's going to be my pick to get it done.
Yeah, I'll be quick, man. I like Tracy, man. I studied a lot of this fight, and I think in this fight, Tracy's she's gonna be able to get the takedowns. She's gonna be the bigger girl in there. Amanda Ribas is a 115-pound fighter. She's going up to 125. So Cortez is gonna have that physicality in this fight. Right, so I think that Cortez, I think Ribas has the jiu-jitsu, but as you've seen, Cortez, she avoided the grappling with Gatto. She was able to stay out of danger, and as you said, she's with what's his name again? Ortega.
Yeah,
she's with Ortega, right? So they're both trained by the Gracies, right? So she's definitely getting trained by the Gracies as well with the jiu-jitsu. She's gonna have a game plan here, and she sticks to it. She gets the takedowns. And she can do it over 3 rounds. I like the cardio. I like her heart, and the IQ is big for me in picking fighters, especially women fighters. And Tracy Cortez has the IQ, so this could look like a close match, but I do believe Cortez is going to win a clear 2 rounds, maybe 3 in this fight.
Right, fight number 5 in that case, we're looking at Darren Elkins versus Jonathan Pearce. For Darren Elkins, unanimous decision win over Tristan Connolly back in April. The tough veteran, 38 years old, getting up there in age, of course. I would say below average with his stand-up, but he does like to engage. He has active jabs. He has active combinations. He puts the pressure on. He comes forward. He is able to take a hit, although definitely wears the damage. Looks bad on him for sure. Has solid takedowns. Has solid active takedown attempts. 2.75 takedowns per fight. And on top of that, he has that pace, he has that heart, just doesn't really stop. With that clinch, he chains the wrestling attempts together. He puts on that heavy wrestling pace. Some fighters aren't able to handle it. I do think Jonathan Pearce will be able to handle it because we know that's very much a strength of his. He's on a 4-fight winning streak after beating Makwan Amirkhani. He's pretty tall for the division. He's going to use that reach. In this case, it's going to be the same, but still will be the longer fighter with a slight height advantage. He does those front kicks, those push kicks to kind of keep range, and has decent boxing to go along with it. He's definitely willing to engage in his own right. Regular jab usage in his own right, has a long jab, good in and out movement on top of that. And, his striking definitely looks like it's improving. So he could be the fighter that has the clear striking advantage in this one. And I think he's going to be the fighter that has the better wrestling. His wrestling is pretty strong. He can land a takedown. He has good entries. He has relentless wrestling. And even if he's taken down, he's so active in defending it and scrambling. JSP, JSP, before I say GSP by accident, but JSP all the way on this one, is a big favorite for a reason. He's 8 years younger. I think he's better everywhere. I think he's just as tough. I'm expecting him to find the finish here, whether it's via ground and pound or whether it's via submission on the ground. I wouldn't bet that per se, but in terms of making a pick, I feel pretty comfortable with Jonathan Pearce.
Yeah, Jonathan's gonna run through this guy, man. Elkins is getting up there in age. Wrestling is a young man's sport, and yeah, this guy's just gonna overwhelm him. I think once he gets him on the ground, he's gonna let some ground and pound go, and it's gonna be pretty quick, and you'll see Elkins bleeding right on his face. He bleeds almost every fight. Um, Jonathan Pearce, he's gonna get it done, man. He's gonna run through this guy, take him down. He's gonna be the better grappler, but I think we're gonna see improvements in the stand up. Elkins has not improved his stand up in a long time. And Jonathan Pearce is getting a bit better each fight. I think he's going to be a slightly better striker in this fight, but he could come into this fight with renewed striking and look even better than I'm thinking, right? So, but again, if not even, I think the wrestling, the grappling, the pace, I think it's going to be too much for Elkins at this point in his career.
Fight number 6, Michael Johnson versus Marc Diakiese. Michael Johnson, split decision loss to Jamie Mullarkey back in July. Very close fight on that one. We know the Michael Johnson script at this point. He's still an excellent boxer, still a good striker, still has quick hands, southpaw with good movement. He looks pretty refreshed in his past couple of fights. I mean, we know that he's sharp. I think still only, 35, 36 years old, so has a little bit left in the tank. Legitimate takedown defense at 79%, has that good aggressive sprawl. I've seen, however, I have seen good takedown artists not really have the toughest time taking him to the mat. So that's something to be weary of. But again, I mean, he's been able to keep his fights standing in his last few fights and be very effective, whether win or lose. Marc Diakiese, on the other hand, unanimous decision win over Damir Hadzovic in July. Good overall stand-up, good feints, good movement. He has a good calf kick. Pretty athletic, has a good long jab. Sorry. He can switch stance, solid hands. He's a solid kickboxer in general. He can be taken down, although I don't think that will matter in this fight. But what's really interesting to note with Marc Diakiese is this recent commitment to wrestling, recent commitment to takedowns in his past few fights. You know, he's looked really strong. He's been spamming these takedowns. The takedowns are good. The top control is good. Bit of a lay and pray to some degree, but still active enough to score points effectively. He's going to chain those wrestling attempts together as well if you do work your way back up. And that's really only, again, basing this on his last 2 fights. But when I think about that, when I think about Marc Diakiese as a whole, I think there's a few key stylistic advantages for me that he has in this one. Specifically on the feet, I think about that calf kick. We know that Michael Johnson, more of a boxer stance, for lack of a better word. That calf kick is going to be there. And also that commitment to wrestling, like I mentioned, that he's been showing over his last 2 fights. 19 total takedowns landed in those 2 fights. And 79% takedown defense or not for Michael Johnson. I think that means that Marc Diakiese is going to be able to land some takedowns throughout this fight. We know that Michael Johnson's always going to be a threat. Potentially has more striking IQ, dangerous speed, dangerous power still to this day. But I mean, again, Marc Diakiese, clearly he's found a new path to victory in his past few fights. I believe he's going to be able to resort to that same style for this fight. And from a betting perspective, you have to like it. You know, the takedown attempts are pretty spammy. It puts rounds in his favor. It makes him a good betting target. So I'm looking at Marc Diakiese to get it done. Again, Michael Johnson is always dangerous, but outside of that puncher's chance, I think Marc Diakiese has more ways to win this one.
Yeah, for me, this is a really tough fight. I'm edging. I'm gonna go with Marc Diakiese, but ever so slightly because those last 2 fights, he fought guys that have really bad takedown defense. And in his fights versus obviously Fiziev, he kind of he got submitted there. But in his fight versus not Fiziev, in his fight versus the guy after Fiziev, he got submitted. But the Fiziev fight, where was this GSP takedowns? Where was it, right? Because Fiziev has good takedown defense. He has strong hips. But Hadzovic and that Borshev guy, they have 0 takedowns. And he went with a smart game plan, getting the fight to the mat. And and winning the fight that way. But against Michael Johnson, he has really good training partners. He has a really good gym that he's at. He was a wrestler first. Obviously, he does get taken down, but he can stop a takedown. He's a much better takedown defense than the last two guys he's fought. So to me, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure how it's going to go. When it comes to the striking, I think Michael's a more dangerous striker, but I do think that Diakiese has good qualities in the striking as well. Like I think Diakiese is the better kickboxer. I think Michael's the better boxer. So I think he can hold his own, but I think if it stays standing up the whole fight, I think it's a 50-50 matchup. So it's a close one for me. I'm edging Diakiese because he does have that grappling in it. So he's the more well-rounded guy at this point. He's gonna utilize more tools, the kicks. He should be able to utilize the leg kicks in this fight. I don't think Johnson likes those. Man, it's tough. But yeah, I'm gonna go Diakiese ever so slightly on this fight because I do think Johnson is a live underdog to stop the takedowns and hurt Diakiese on the feet, right? So, but I'm gonna go Diakiese to edge this one.
Fight number 7 of our prelims, we have Clay Guida taking on Scott Holtzman. Clay Guida last fought in April. He lost to Claudio Puelles at that time. We know his MO, toughness, wrestling. On the feet, he's going to give you a lot of movement. He's going to give you a high pace. He's willing to engage. He's willing to brawl. But we know he's going to aggressively look for that takedown at some point in time in this fight. And also a cardio machine and also a toughness machine. So, very hard to get him out of there. Scott Holtzman, over a year and a half since the last time he fought, he lost to Mateusz Gamrot all the way back in April 2021. He's one of those fighters that can do a little bit of everything, but not any one thing particularly amazing. He does have good IQ. He'll try to play to his comparative strengths, typically in his fights. A lot of movement on the feet. He fights from distance, solid jab, decent technique, good timing as a counterpuncher as well. And again, we see that he can land that takedown with those takedown numbers there at over 50% and a couple of takedowns per fight. I think that Clay Guida can and will land a takedown or two. Keep in mind, Scott Holtzman, we think about Clay Guida's age at 40 years old. Scott Holtzman's just as old. I think 39 years old, if I'm not mistaken. So you got to ask yourself, what brings Scott Holtzman back after almost 2 years out of the octagon? How effective, how real, I should say, will that ring rust be compared to a fighter in Clay Guida who fought just 6 months ago? I can see similarities to how Clay Guida will implement his game plan with how Mateusz Gamrot was able to implement it versus Scott Holtzman. I can see Clay Guida fighting from the outside, making Scott Holtzman chase him a little bit, while being effective, with his own kind of wild style of striking and finding those takedown opportunities that I mentioned. I also believe that, of course, Clay Guida has the better cardio. I think there's really good underdog value here. Essentially, it's two 40-year-olds and anything can happen. So when I think about that, I think about a 50-50 fight, if nothing else. And then I also think about the potential ring rust and all the time that Scott Holtzman has taken off. And where's his mind at? What's his reason for returning after almost a 2-year layoff? So I'm just going to go with the fighter that's more active. From a betting perspective, I'm staying far away from this. But from a pick perspective, I'm simply going with the fighter that is more active with better cardio. And that answer is Clay Guida.
Yeah, I agree. This is a fight you definitely don't want to bet. This is not the fight you want to bet, right? So Clay Guida, he's gonna come in there with the cardio edge. He's gonna have that wrestling. He's gonna be the smaller guy in this fight. They're both old. Holtzman, he's been off for a minute. He's gonna come in with the better striking, and he does have power. Holtzman has been fighting some pretty tough oppositions prior to this fight. Yeah, this is a tough fight to decide because Clay Guida can easily go in there, utilize that grappling. But I do believe Holtzman, as the fight goes on, I think Holtzman's going to give some resistance on these takedowns. And I think that Holtzman's going to have that advantage on the feet to hurt Guida. Guida was struggling with Marc Madsen on the feet, right? So you got to think that Holtzman is a better striker than Marc Madsen. But obviously, they're two completely different fighters, right? You can't really compare fights that way. But I do think Holtzman's gonna defend the takedowns. He might get taken down early, but I see as the fight goes on, he defends them. He's the bigger guy. He's gonna be the stronger guy. I think he can get back up, get back to his feet, and I think keep it in boxing range. And I think he's gonna catch Guida. I think he's gonna catch him, man. But I like Scott Holtzman to win this fight. But am I confident? Not at all.
Eighth fight of our prelims, Angela Hill versus Emily Ducote. Angela Hill, unanimous decision win over Lupi Godinez back in August. Muay Thai fighter, really good on the feet, good speed, good continuous movement. She has quick feet. She moves very well laterally, uses a lot of fakes and feints to kind of set up her attack. But I do really like that she throws punches in combinations. It's never really one at a time. She keeps a good distance. She has a good long jab. Good in and out movement, like I mentioned, good IQ, really effective clinch as well in terms of the Muay Thai clinch. Good ability to get up if she is taken down, but that said, good takedown defense, 76%. So not the easiest. I don't think that'll matter for this one. She has really good cardio. That's one of her big, benefits to her game. She can fight at a high pace throughout the entire fight, and we see how that wears on her opponents. Especially in that last fight versus Lupi Godinez. Emily Ducote, on the other hand, 4-fight winning streak. She beat Jessica Penne in her July debut. She's patient on the feet. She has an active jab, clean boxing, clean combinations, some calf kicks. Otherwise, she's going to take mainly a boxing approach to her stand-up, good footwork to go along with it, and good timing as a counterpuncher. She's going to prefer a more technical style of stand-up, so she might not be the best at handling pressure. I can see Angela Hill possibly taking advantage of that in certain moments of the fight. Emily Ducote, I mentioned Angela Hill's takedown defense won't matter. Ducote, very much a stand-up artist. I have seen her land takedown before her time in the UFC, but looks like she is somebody that prefers this fight on the feet. I think this is a close fight. Doesn't surprise me. Angela Hill finds herself in another close fight. But I think she has a real shot here. I'm looking at Angela Hill as having more speed and more diversity on the feet, better movement on the feet. We know that Ducote does a good job, I should say, at slowly closing distance. We know that Ducote has very effective hands, so she could possibly corner Angela Hill and just have a really a lot of beneficial moments in the striking exchanges. But that said, I'm gonna roll the dice on Angela Hill. It looks like she's being plugged into that kind of Cub Swanson gatekeeper role. And she showed in her last fight that she can still pull out the victory against these rising fighters in Lupi Godinez. And I think she can potentially be a hard target to hit as the fight goes on. And I think that striking diversity that she has, that speed that she has, that movement that she has, can give her a real opportunity to win on points here. Close fight. It's really a coin flip fight for me. I can't confidently say either fighter is going to win. So it's really kind of a gut pick to say I'm going with Angela Hill on this one.
Yeah, for sure, man. Like, this is a fight that, honestly, I don't know what's going to happen, obviously, but I would figure that Angela Hill's going to be the bigger favorite. I've been following Emily Ducote, like, Harris, as you know, man, I'm a big Bellator fan, right? So I've been following this girl for a really, really long time. I'm talking like back 2016. And when I look at the people she's fought, she's had issues with Alima Leigh McFarland with the grappling, right? But she had issues with Christina Williams. That's a fighter that fights kind of like Angela Hill can do what she can do. She's a striker first, and she was able to like outpoint Emily Ducote in that fight, win a decision, should be unanimous. It was a good fight, but it was split. But that fight tells me that Angela Hill can definitely get this done. Angela Hill has fought many fighters like Emily Ducote on a higher level. And Angela Hill is taking jiu-jitsu more serious. Just recently, in October, she was in a grappling match. I think they even have it on Tapology showing that. So she's definitely working on that game. She showed improvements in her fight versus Lupi, keeping the fight on the feet with her movement, with her the fight just never went to the mat. And we know Loopy has good grappling. I think Emily is a good fighter, good potential, but I think that Angela Hill is going to be able to avoid the grappling, beat her in the striking. I think the striking, Angela's much better than her in. I'm really not sure why the odds are this close. I honestly have Angela Hill as a minus 200 in a fight like this. So I think Angela Hill for me is the spot, but her record's 14-12. So she loses fights. She even loses fights that she wins. So, but I like her in this spot here. So I'm going to go Angela Hill. And let's run down something real quick before I pass it back to Harris. She beat Lupi Godinez. Yes, she had a hard time with Jandaroba. Amanda Lemos, that fight could have went either way. And the Claudia Gadelia fight, she should have won that fight. So I like Angela Hill in this spot. Her record should be better. I think she gets it done.
Moving on to fight number 9 of our prelims, final fight of the prelims, we have Niko Price versus Phil Rowe. Niko Price, over a year since his last fight, he beat Alex Cowboy Oliveira at that time, October 2021. Decent on the feet, hits hard, solid boxing, kind of marches you down, definitely willing to engage. Good use of the jab, good striking diversity, pretty solid calf kick too. He will slow down as the fight goes on, but the cardio will hold up throughout the fight enough for him to still come forward. Box in range, kind of put the pressure on you and kind of still try to implement his style. Less than a takedown per fight, so expect him to keep it standing, though he can work pretty well in the clinch. And I can see him potentially using that against a Phil Rowe type of fighter due to his length, right? We know Phil Rowe beat Jason Witt in February, 2-fight winning streak. We know he's very tall. He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage in this one, 3 inches in height, a lot of movement. He's pretty relaxed in the stand-up, keeps a good range, good long jab, long straight combinations. He fights from the outside, and just 47% takedown defense. Again, going back to Niko Price potentially attempting that clinch takedown type of style against him. Phil Rowe doesn't really fare too well in wrestling and in clinch situations. Good top game, though, should it get there. He is a BJJ brown belt last time I checked, so he has some knowledge on the ground. But again, not a ground threat by any means. Now, despite those cautions, I do like Phil Rowe here. He is on a 2-fight winning streak, like I mentioned, and his striking has looked pretty dangerous in those wins, granted, against guys who he does clearly have the better striking advantage over. I do think this fight stays on the feet. Again, Niko Price is more likely to keep it on the feet. I don't consider him a strong wrestler or someone who's going to actively try to take the fight to the ground. And I think, again, Phil Rowe is going to have that key length and reach advantage that he's going to take advantage of. I also feel like Phil Rowe is the sharper striker of the two. And most importantly, we've seen Niko Price finished before. So it wouldn't surprise me if Phil Rowe does get a knockout here. It's a close fight, but I do like the momentum of Phil Rowe in this one. So he's going to be my pick.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So, I like Phil Rowe, man. I think he gets it done, man. I think Niko's going to need to get it to the mat. Phil has shown really good striking. And the improvements with this guy from the Leon Shabazian fight, he keeps getting better. That Jason Witt fight, he looked really good. The Orion Koski fight, he looked really good when he got his striking going. So I can see early on Niko having success with the takedowns, but Rowe is a grappler. He does grappling tournaments as well, so he's trying to fix that hole in his game. And he's going to be able to survive the ground. And as the fight goes on, Rowe still has some cardio left, and these guys can't get him down. And then at that point, he just overwhelms them with his striking style. I like Philip Rowe here to get this one done.
All right, let's take it away from the prelims, take it to the main card. Fight number 1, Eryk Anders versus Kyle Daukaus. Eryk Anders is on a 2-fight losing streak after a split decision loss to Jung Park back in May. He's a southpaw, pretty solid all around. Not really the fastest hands, not really the fastest fighter in general, but he has good power and good pressure. Also throws a lot of fakes and a lot of jabs as well. Uses that to kind of pressure his opponents, uses that to incorporate wrestling as well. He's definitely willing to hold that clinch against the cage and make multiple attempts at the takedown. You see his takedown numbers there. They're not the most impressive, 1.5 takedowns per at 25% accuracy. But what that's letting you know is that that's letting you know that his game is a lot of clinch work against the cage. Again, a lot of control time against the cage rather than necessarily landing that takedown every time. And that could still potentially be something that scores points against fighters that can't really get him off of them. Cardio is naturally an issue with his bigger frame, but it is something that he has improved. Kyle Daukaus, on the other hand, lost to Roman Dolidze back in June. He's this tall southpaw. He throws, long strikes, long jabs. When he gets in rhythm, he can really start to piece his strikes together. Good boxing. He's a patient fighter as well. Really good grappler. He's a BJJ black belt. He's good in the clinch. Also good at stopping takedowns. So 86% takedown defense. I really don't see Anders being able to take this fight to the mat. He also lands over two takedowns per fight in his own right. So that is something that he has been able to rely on. Eryk Anders is live here. Dolidze was able to use that clinch work after hurting Daukaus. Anders has the same power. Anders has that ability to, or at least game plan wise, that ability to use the clinch work, though he's probably not as high of a level as Dolidze in that area. But I do think Kyle Daukaus is the better overall talent here. Neither of them are extremely active strikers, but Daukaus absorbs a lot less. I believe that Daukaus is the more diverse striker. I think he's going to be able to do more on the feet. Again, he also has great takedown defense at 89%, sorry, 86%. And he should be able to keep it on the fight, to that regard. Kyle Daukaus still has to kind of prove himself in the UFC, still has to kind of make a statement. I think he's has a losing record in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a great opportunity for him to do that against a very beatable opponent in Eryk Anders. But again, Anders is live. Anders is the power threat. I just feel like Kyle Daukaus is the better overall fighter. So Kyle Daukaus is going to be my pick.
Yeah, this is a tricky fight because, as you mentioned, and I agree, Kyle Daukaus, he has the better skill set. Kyle Daukaus, the problem with him for me is he's a bit soft, right? He can get hit and he can get hurt and he can get knocked out, right? So, and he's fighting a guy in Anders who's going to be the athlete in this fight. Anders is a strong guy. So Kyle's going to need to really use technique to get his grappling going against this. The guy he's going to be physically stronger than Kyle Daukaus in this fight. But again, when you look at everything, Kyle Daukaus edges him in the striking. He's much better in the grappling, much better jiu-jitsu. He has the better wrestling, but he's not the stronger guy. I think Kyle gets it to the mat at some point in this fight and shines in that area. I think he's going to kind of get a body lock takedown, get the body lock from the back and kind of drag him down. I think that takedown is going to be open for him in this fight. So I think there will be a path to get it to the mat, and it's night and day there. I think Kyle Daukaus' jiu-jitsu game is going to destroy Anders' ground game. So I like Daukaus in this spot. Close fight because Anders is big. Daukaus is not the toughest guy. So Anders can knock him out, but skill for skill, I think Kyle has this one. So I'm going to go Kyle Daukaus to win this fight.
Fight number 2 of our main card and another middleweight affair here. We have Jack Hermansson versus Roman Dolidze. Jack Hermansson, unanimous decision win over Chris Curtis back in July. He's primarily a grappler, wrestler type of fighter, but he is solid on the feet, has a solid jab, a bit underrated with his combinations, with his overall striking diversity. He has decent kicks. He has pretty solid striking IQ as well. And he's patient, doesn't really care to excite the crowd. We saw what happened in his last fight, and that worked to his favor. He was starting to frustrate his opponent in Chris Curtis. He'll fake those level changes to keep his opponents guessing. And in general, good entries for takedowns. He is a good wrestler once he gets you down. I wouldn't say he is that strong at always getting you down. Just 1.5 takedowns per, just over 25% accuracy. So again, he can't always find it, but again, if he does land it, good positional improvements, good top control. solid ground and pound. Expect him to pretty much win the round at that point. But that could be a lot different going up against Roman Dolidze, who of course his specialty occurs on the ground. And Dolidze is gaining a little bit of momentum. He's on a 3-fight winning streak, knocked out Phil Hawes. That was just 5 weeks ago, so it's a quick turnaround for him. His style is that smothering wrestling. You always got to mention that he's a world champion and a European champion as well with respect to his grappling. So very credentialed on the ground. We have questioned his IQ and his cardio tank in the past. His stand-up is also fairly basic, but he is becoming a little bit more composed. He is showing slightly better IQ. He's starting to play to his strengths more. And on the feet, he does have a decent jab. He can be explosive. Despite the stand-up being fairly basic, again, he's still going to come with that power. Half of his, or almost half of his wins are via KO, TKO, including his last fight. And we saw him drop, we saw him drop his last opponent without really much of a windup before that stoppage. So he just has that natural power in him. Jack Hermansson was originally supposed to fight Derek Brunson for this fight. So we're seeing Roman Dolidze step in, technically a short notice fight, but he should still be in shape. Again, he fought just 5 weeks ago. Dolidze also has been showing that he's dangerous with that power over his last few fights. So you got to think, you see your Dolidze here as an underdog. He definitely is live. He definitely has some value. There's definitely reasons to like him, but I'm going to essentially trust Jack Hermansson and Jack Hermansson's ability to stay out of danger. I think his patience will pay off. We saw, again, what he was able to do with Chris Curtis, stall him out in terms of that early round power and score points in the meantime. Hermansson also should have a huge cardio advantage in this fight, and I think that's going to also tip the scale in his favor. So I'm looking at Hermansson by decision for this one. I think he's going to frustrate Dolidze. I think he's going to stay away from the power. And I don't think Dolidze is going to have too easy of a time getting this to the mat. So Jack Hermansson is going to be my pick. He's going to frustrate Dolidze, get a unanimous decision in his favor.
Yeah, this is a great fight, man. There's some things to like about Dolidze. He has that power. You go down his record, he's a grappler, but he has a lot of finishes by knockouts, right? And early on, and even in the UFC, he's finishing guys. So this guy's dangerous, and he knocks guys out in the 3rd round. This guy's huge. He looks like a light heavyweight. So there's things to like about him in this spot. He has that really good high level grappling game that is so good. He has won grappling tournaments. So it's actually on a higher level than a lot of the fighters in the UFC is grappling, but he doesn't really show it all the time. But in that Haas fight, we saw how dangerous he was in like 15 seconds. He snapped the guy's knee. So this guy's dangerous guy. He's Georgian. So there's a lot of things to like about this guy. He only has 1 loss on his record. But when you look at Jack Hermansson, this guy has fought the who's who. This guy, he has grappling, so he should be able to know what he's doing in the grappling exchanges. He has some wrestling, but he's not the best at getting takedowns. So it's going to be really tough to get Dolidze down. I think Dolidze can get Jack down, but it's not going to be easy. And I don't think Dolidze coming in on short notice is going to want to come play wrestling on short notice. I think he's going to come in here, keep this on the feet. Dolidze is going to want a striking match. Coming in on short notice, it's going to be tough to go with a heavy wrestling route to fight this one. So I think Jack's going to keep it on the feet. I think Roman's going to keep it on the feet. Jack's the better striker. He's more active, and he is by far the better striker in this fight. So I think that's going to tell the story here. I think Jack's going to win this fight. Plus, it's 3 rounds. So as the fight goes, and you know that Jack has that cardio, he can keep going. And Roman does slow down even after the first round. Jack doesn't. So I like Jack to get the win here.
Fight number 3 of our main card, really good heavyweight fight, Tuivasa versus Sergei Pavlovich. Somebody's probably getting knocked out in this fight. Really going to be about who catches who first. Tuivasa lost to Cyril Gane. He's considered a street fighter. He's tough. not afraid to engage. Solid stand up though. Just to go with that power. He usually controls the center of the octagon, but he also has a good jab. He has a good overhand right. He uses that calf kick pretty well, and he's pretty patient. He's not, he maintains a decent pace. He's not going to be one of those people that overswing, gas himself out too early, despite his physique and his physique suggesting that he would get tired quickly. His cardio holds up because of his IQ, because of his striking ability. Sergei Pavlovich, on the other hand, 4-fight win streak, 4 knockouts in a row now after beating Derek Lewis in July. Clean hands, dangerous right hand. He's essentially a boxer. Don't really see too many kicks out of him. Decent movement. Definitely going to be the quicker of the two here with the better footwork. At least is what I anticipate. He has a good stiff jab. He has power. 13 of his 16 wins are via KO, TKO. Plus, I mentioned the 4 knockouts in a row. The activity is solid. He's going to want to stay in front of you. He's going to want to exchange, but also he's going to try to stay right out of your range, with a lot of fakes. And, with that reach advantage that he's going to have in this one, which is about 9 inches. Like I said, someone's getting knocked out here. It's going to be about who catches who first, but I'll keep the prediction short. I like Sergei Pavlovich in this one. Different style of fighter than Ciryl Gane, but Ciryl Gane was able to capitalize on a 6-inch reach advantage that he had against Tai Tuivasa in order to stop Tuivasa from being effective. Pavlovich, like I said, is going to have a 9-inch reach advantage in this one. I feel like Pavlovich is also the cleaner striker, the quicker striker as well, except he has just as much, if not more power. It's not to say Tuivasa is overrated, but Pavlovich, in my opinion, presents a higher level of skill. Obviously, it's still a heavyweight fight. It's still heavyweight beware. It's still anyone can catch anyone first. But if we're talking skill for skill, I like Sergei Pavlovich to get this one done.
Yeah, this is a crazy fight because we know that Tuivasa can take a shot, and we know he has power. He can knock anybody out. And Pavlovich has been finished, but I believe that was on the ground with Overeem. But I think Pavlovich is actually going to pull out the wrestling in this fight. I think he's going to see that big hole. He's Russian. This guy can definitely take Tuivasa down. And I actually see him seeing that the striking's a bit dangerous with this guy. I see him getting him right, taking him right down and grounding him out, likely getting a finish on the mat. So I like Pavlovich here. Fight smart. He could likely win the striking as well with that reach and that power. But I think he can come out here flawless if he just utilizes that wrestling, get the single leg. He is going to be able to get the takedowns. So I think Sergei should go that route. So Pavlovich is my pick here.
Fight number 4 of our main card, Matheus Nicolau versus Matt Schnell. Nicolau's on a 5-fight win streak now after beating David Dvorak in March. Good patient movement. Look for him to fight at range. Good calf kick, good jab to maintain distance. And, he's an effective striker. He's good at picking his shots. The speed is there. The timing is there. Good counter puncher. He can land takedowns as well when he looks for them. Good takedown defense too, which probably won't be too relevant in this one. Matt Schnell had that comeback win over Jauregui back in July. He's methodical in the stand-up. He's going to kind of lull you to sleep. And then, look for opportunities with his quick hands, with his accurate hands, with his good combinations, especially, again, coming off of those counter situations. Very efficient striker, and he has good movement around the ring as well, but he is a bit more aggressive with his striking style, especially lately. A lot more coming forward, a bit more activity. He's showing that he is a very capable striker and proved how tough he can be, of course, in his last fight as well. I think this is a very good close fight. These guys match up well. Expect Schnell to try to push the action, but I actually think that's what's going to work against him here with Matheus Nicolau's counter punching ability. I think Nicolau will be able to land a takedown or two. I think Nicolau has a speed advantage here as well. But I do think Matt Schnell is live. And maybe it's some recency bias with the way that he was able to come back in his last fight. But we can't forget, Matt Schnell is still a talented fighter, is still somebody who can do a little bit of everything. but I believe that Mateus Nicolau just has more to offer, more effective striking, the slightly better ground game, the slightly better counter puncher, slightly more power. Mateus Nicolau, I think, again, just has those qualities slightly in his favor to pull this fight out. So I'm looking at Mateus Nicolau to get it done. Unanimous decision type of fight, or potentially finish his match now.
Yeah, I think this is the lock of the card, man. I like Nicolau here to get it done. Yeah, he's going to make it look easy, man. I think his striking is better. He has more power. But I think he should go the Dagestan route, grapple this guy, and I think he's going to look good doing it, man. So I like Nicolau here to get the win here decisively. I think this is definitely the lock of the card.
All right, not too much time spent there, so we'll move on to our co-main event of the evening, and I believe the biggest favorite on the card, Rafael dos Anjos taking on Bryan Barberena. Dos Anjos lost to Fiziev back in July, and at this stage in his career, still very capable on the feet, still sharp, the movement's still good. Good striking diversity. He can land the takedown as well. He is a BJJ black belt on top of that. Almost 2 takedowns per fight, so it can be a legitimate part of his game. Probably not in this one. Barberena will be the bigger fighter for this one, but he has legitimate 5-round cardio. RDA I'm talking about. Ultimately, RDA is still a very well-rounded veteran, still capable of putting on a high-level performance. And again, going up against Barberena, who beat Robbie Lawler back in July, who is a striker, who's a southpaw. You're going to see a lot of in and out from Bryan Barberena, a lot of fake jabs as he looks to set up that big left hand. More toughness than skill in my eyes. Wouldn't really call him a high-level striker at all, but he does have a good continuous work rate, and he's tough, like I mentioned. His last fight is a good example of that. Again, I won't spend too much time here just because RDA is, again, the biggest favorite on the card. I will say I'm not going to bet this one just because I can't fully all the way trust it, but it should be RDA all day on this one. I mean, he's the much better fighter here. We saw Barberena being handled by Robbie Lawler before Robbie Lawler's cardio tank started to drain. The difference here is that RDA, again, has that championship level cardio. RDA is the much more diverse striker. RDA can resort potentially to the wrestling and to the grappling as well, because again, Barberena has awful takedown defense. I'd be very surprised if Bryan Barberena won this. And again, maybe this is a parlay piece, but I don't know. There's something about these big favorites that don't always rub me the right way. So I think I might stay away from this one from a betting perspective. But again, RDA all day on this one.
Yeah, you got to think. You got to think RDA is going to get this one done. He's going to be winning the fight minute by minute, and he's going to be winning the majority of this fight. For him to lose this fight, which I'm getting the feeling like something dramatic is going to happen in this fight, that RDA is going to get caught by Barberena, and his age is going to show. But I'm going to go with the logical pick. I think Dos Anjos is going to be winning the majority of this fight. I think when he gets the takedown, his top game is really, really good. And in the striking as well, he's really technical as well. He's going to be the more technical guy. But in the striking, Barberena is always live. He'll take a shot to give a shot. Those are the most dangerous guys to fight in striking. Those guys don't care. So, yeah, it's a fight where I based on skill, based on paper, Dos Anjos should run away with this. But again, I'm getting a feeling that Bryan's going to somehow pull off a big upset. But I'm not making picks on feelings, right? So, but I'm going to go with Rafael Dos Anjos to get this one done.
All right, so let's move on to our main event of the evening. In that case, we have Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Kevin Holland. Stephen Thompson, unanimous decision loss to Bilal Muhammad. That was last year. We know his karate side stance at this point, a lot of kicks in his game, fights at range, good movement. He's often a hard target to hit. The hands stay down, but he uses that to his advantage. Really sneaky counter puncher, especially moving backward. Good speed as well, good movement around the ring. But you always got to ask yourself, he's 39 years old at this point. You got to ask yourself whether or not time will catch up to him. That's definitely a risk from any kind of betting perspective. for this fight. I don't think the takedown defense will matter in this one either, but Stephen Thompson, historically good takedown defense until his last two fights against two dangerous guys with respect to their ground game. Kevin Holland, on the other hand, he lost to Khamzat Chimaev back in September. Of course, that was a debacle of a fight card and a really bad matchup for Kevin Holland, so I don't put too much stock into that fight in general. Good kickboxing. He's going to use all of his length. He's going to have that reach advantage, 6 inches in this one. He's quick on the feet. He has solid striking IQ, decent clinch. I don't think that'll matter. Good grappler as well. I don't think that'll matter. And again, Kevin Holland doesn't really have the best takedown defense, but I don't think that'll matter here either. Ultimately, this is the type of fight that Kevin Holland has been calling for a long time now. He finally gets it. A fight that is definitely going to stay on the feet. And with that said, it's a tricky one, right? I think, again, Kevin Holland is going to have that 6-inch reach advantage, and he's definitely going to want to capitalize on it. But this is a fight that I'm going a little bit back and forth on. On one hand, Kevin Holland kind of has a habit of biting off more than he can chew, of making these call outs, of wanting to fight certain fighters, and then kind of being reminded of what level he's at, right? Wonderboy can simply show that there's levels to this. On the other hand, like I said, I asked myself if at 39 years old, is Wonderboy legitimately slowing down? Ultimately, I have to bank on the smarter pick. I think the smarter pick is the bigger fighter, the younger fighter, the more athletic fighter in Kevin Holland, the fighter with the reach advantage, which I see playing a role, and the fighter who at this stage in his career is definitely the faster fighter as well, in Kevin Holland. Not sure if this is a retirement fight for Wonderboy, but it's been a year since his last fight. I got to kind of ask myself where his head is at this point. I almost kind of think like Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Zhang Weili Part 2 in some ways. I don't know. I'm going to go with the guy whose head is in the game, even though you could say the same about Kevin Holland with that recent retirement announcement. But just in general, the younger, more athletic guy playing up to his level of competition versus a declining fighter that once was in Stephen Thompson. I'm going with Kevin Holland on this one. I will admit it's more of a gut pick than anything. And on top of that, I am not interested in betting on this one at all, unless it's throwaway money, quite literally. But nonetheless, Kevin Holland is going to be my pick.
Yeah, what is...
You're cutting in and out, your audio.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good now.
All right, so that's the ESPN odds, eh? They have Thompson as the underdog. What's the current odds? That or the Tapology odds?
Current odds has it roughly at what ESPN is showing.
Okay, because Tapology has it even.
Yeah, it opened up even.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
And it looks like money's
right.
Holland.
You got Wonderboy as the underdog. Okay, so based on that, I'm gonna go with Wonderboy. He's the underdog in this fight. He's a lot of things are against him in this fight. He's the older guy. He's been fighting a guy that has a pretty good 1-2 length, good speed. I just haven't seen Wonderboy lose many striking fights, right? So I think he gets this one done, man. So I'm gonna go with Wonderboy, just being the more technical striker. I don't think Holland's gonna get it to the mat. Am I confident? No way. This is 50-50 here. I can see Thompson winning the fight minute by minute, and then Holland gets to finish, right? So this is the type of fight where I'm going to go with the guy I believe should be winning the majority of the fight. But again, Holland has that ability to just have the big moments. So it is a tough fight for me to pick, but I'm going to go with Wonderboy one last time.
All right, so let's take it to Vegas. Let's see what we're considering from a betting perspective. And let's start with underdogs. I'll read them out. We have Istela Nunes. We have Marcelo Rojo, Genaro Valdéz. Tracy Cortez is a pick'em, so we will count that. Darren Elkins, Michael Johnson, Clay Guida, Angela Hill, Phil Rowe, Eryk Anders, Roman Dolidze, Tuivasa, Matt Schnell, Brian Barberina, and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson.
All right, guys, I got two underdogs that I like. I got Tracy Cortez and Angela Hill.
Tracy Cortez, Angela Hill, both of them are right around even money. So take your pick there. In terms of my underdog pick, I'm actually looking at Clay Guida to get it done versus a fighter coming off of a 2-year layoff, Scott Holtzman. And in terms of parlay pieces or favorite picks, who are you taking a look at?
All right, so I'm going with my boy JSP, Jonathan Pearce. I'm going with Rafael Dos Anjos. I'm going with, sorry about this. I'm just looking at it. Philip Rowe. And that's it.
All right, 3 picks there. 2.93 overall. That means $100 will return.
Oh, sorry. Oh, man. Harris, man. The lock of the card I have to put on there. Matthias Nicolau. Sorry about that.
Definitely got to keep that included. So 3.66 at that point amongst 4 fights. That means $100 will get us 366 in total return. For our bigger bettors, $250 will return 916. In terms of a ticket that I am looking at, I am going to take a look at Yazmin Jauregui. I'm looking at Jonathan Pearce as well. I'm looking at Marc Diakiese. And I'm going with the heavyweight, Sergei Pavlovich. Those 4 fights would be a 3.06, meaning $100 will return $306. And for our bigger bettors, $250 will return $765. So let's officially sign off on that note. Again, this has been UFC Fight Night, Stephen Thompson versus Kevin Holland, your full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. It's the return of Zan, so please let us know how you feel. Who are your underdog picks? What favorite picks are you looking at? Or is there a fight that you want a little bit of a deeper analysis on? Let it be known in the comments. We're more than happy to have that conversation with you. But to officially sign off, UFC Fight Night, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Kevin Holland. Full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. I go by the name of Harris. He goes by the name of Zahn. And in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's get it.